From AATH, the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor, this is Laughbox, the podcast for laughter and humor professionals. Here's your host, Chip Lutz.
Well, here we are, ready for a laugh box and for a new year, 2019. It's here. Woo! I'm stoked because I am going to the AATH conference, Chicago, the 4th through the 7th of April. Yeah, and you can too. All you have to do is go to aath.org, get signed up, make an investment in yourself. Now this week on the show, we're talking testicles. Yeah, a touchy subject, and we're talking about it with Justin Birckbichler. He's a young man that got diagnosed with testicular cancer and has made it his life's mission to educate other people using humor to remove the stigma so they are more apt to go out there and get checked out. I know you're really going to enjoy the interview, so sit back and enjoy. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to Laughbox, the official podcast of the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. And today, I get to talk to Justin Birckbichler. Cool guy. We're talking about a subject that people don't talk about enough. A little bit about men's health, but a little bit about testicles, which is fun to say because I'm a guy. Anyway, hey, welcome to the show, my friend.
Glad to be here in this. I'm excited to talk about my two favorite topics in the world, men's health and testicles.
Oh, that's awesome. So for our listeners, you give them like the 411 on Justin.
Yeah, so there are kind of two sides to Justin. Number one side is the side from 2013 through 2016 where I was a fourth grade teacher in various different public schools throughout the state of Virginia, and I really, really enjoyed what I did. And then, so there's, if we were having this discussion, 2 years ago, we'd probably be talking about how I used humor and just engaging resources and and different forms of technology in my classroom. But we are here in 2018 talking about testicles, which are generally something we don't talk about with fourth graders, provided you want to keep a job.
True.
So so in 2016, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and it really changed my life for the better in many ways. But I went through chemotherapy for about 10 weeks. And since I went through that, and while I was going through it, and to this day, I've been a big proponent of talking about testicles and early detection and just men's health in general. And for the record, we're going to talk a lot about testicles here over however long we're talking. And I do want to put it on the record that I am straight and I am married to a woman. But based on how much we're going to talk about balls, that might not be immediately evident.
It's all good. And so I want to, get the backstory on, your journey and everything. Before we get started, I'm just going to ask like a random question, just to get our conversational juices flowing. So what is Justin's go-to jam? I mean, like the one song, like, you're having a bad day. Like for me, I throw a little Bruce Springsteen because I'm an 80s guy. But what is your go-to jam? This is like, you throw it in there. You're like, whoa, it's party time.
Oh, well, that question is not going to help my case in proving that I'm married to a woman. But my go-to jam is going to have to be from Tay-Tay, little Taylor Swift, Shake It Off. And I know that's probably not the most masculine song, but I will say that The Rock did a cover of it on Lip Sync Battle, and I'd be hard-pressed to find someone who is more of the eponymous man than The Rock, but Shake It Off is probably my go-to.
That is awesome. I would never guess in a million years that it was a Taylor Swift song, but there you go. All right. So
yeah, most people don't guess that, but I'm a game changer.
That you are. A game changer, absolutely. So let's get a little bit of the backstory. I mean, because I love the name of your business, a Ballsy sense of tumor. That is a great name for add a little bit of humor to a serious subject. But where so you said 2016. I mean, what led you to? Were you feeling bad? I mean, what was going on that you like? Hey, I need to go to the doctor.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of the most terrifying part of this whole journey is I wasn't feeling bad at all. I really had no medical issues. I was 25 at the time, and I pretty much went through life without having any sort of major medical things. Like I'm colorblind, but there's nothing they can really do about that. And I had scoliosis growing up, but apparently it was just my back was growing faster than the rest of my body, which I didn't know that could happen. But overall, I had really no health problems. And to really underscore that issue, in August of 2016, I had done a Spartan run, which is like a 5K obstacle course, and I had completed it. I'm not going to say I completed it well, but I did complete it. And so I didn't feel bad or anything. I just happened to be doing a self-exam in the shower, because that's one thing that my doctors really reinforced from the time I entered my teenage years up through, my adult life, to do self-exams. And I felt that there was kind of a P-shaped lump on my left testicle towards the bottom. And I didn't recall anything being there in September, the month previously, because this is not now October. And so I knew that it was kind of a concern. And so I kind of let it go for a couple of days, and then I did another self-exam, like literally less than a week later, and the lump had felt bigger, and it also felt like there was another area of concern. And the best way for me to describe what it felt like is if you know the movie Alien, if you imagine like the face hugger alien, it kind of felt like there was another area that was face hugging, but not my face. It was my testicle, which is more terrifying.
That is I'm sorry, that is terrifying. I'm just going to tell you, as another man talking to a man, that is a terrifying image you just threw up there. That is terrifying.
Yeah. So as soon as I figured there were two courses of action here. I could call Sigourney Weaver and see if she would come out of retirement and fight the alien that had taken over my testicle, or I could call a doctor and it was easier to call a doctor at that point than try to track down Sigourney Weaver. So yeah, I called a doctor, and that was a really fun phone call because I had just moved in Virginia, so I didn't even have a doctor yet. So not only did I have to find a doctor, I also had to be like, hey, I want to come in for a phone call, or not. I want to come in for an appointment, but I'm also going to need you to grab my balls on the first time we meet. Is that cool? That was a really bad time to call a wrong number. Pizza Hut no longer returns my phone calls. But eventually I found the right number, and I did get to the doctor.
So, since then, I mean, I know that you're a big proponent for, men's health, but you've been, how do you go out and spread the news on, what, your journey and what people should do?
So I know men, especially men in their 20s, and really any man from like their teenage up to, they're 100 years old, don't really want to open up and talk about their health too often. And this isn't even just me spouting this. The Cleveland Clinic has been doing annual surveys over the past 3 years about different statistics, how men are so guarded with their health. And something like 53% of men won't talk about their health with anybody. 60% of guys won't go to the doctor unless they're like on their deathbeds. And so there's obviously a big need, but at the same time, guys don't want lectures. I know I personally don't want lectures. So what I do is I approach it with a sense of humor, or in my case, a ballsy sense of tumor. And so my big go-to line, I say, I no longer have two testicles, but I do have a new perfect pair: humor and education. And so I kind of lead with a pun or some sort of witty. It took you a second, but you got it.
Yeah.
I I lead with like a pun or some sort of witty remark, and it gets the guys laughing a little bit, and then I follow it up with, "Hey, yeah, that is funny, but you do need to be aware of your risks. And here's how to do early detection." And then I leave it at that. It doesn't have to be, a 5-hour webinar. Just making the guys aware of what can happen.
I can just imagine a 5-hour webinar. These are your testicles, and then it's like really dry. That would be that would be horrible. That would be a horrible webinar.
This is your left testicle.
This is your right. Now going back to because I understand that after 22 years in the Navy, my medical record was paper thin because I never went to the doctor ever. What keeps men from going or talking about their health? Because it seems to be like, I know November is it Movember, where it's men's health, where they try to promote men's health awareness. What is it about that? Is there a stigma you think that's attached to showing that you're human? It's so odd to me.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. I think it's I think it's both a societal problem and then also a male problem in general. That from early on, the thought of like a quintessential man is like a strong, stoic, provides for the family, toughs things out. I mean, you think of the action heroes from the 70s or 80s, or even going back like the Hollywood leading men in the 40s and the 50s. They necessarily didn't talk about that stuff or talk about their feelings or anything. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's still what we kind of hold up as our gold standard. And earlier when I was talking about Taylor Swift and The Rock, I chose The Rock very specifically because we do, he is a big bear of a man. I assume he's like 20 feet tall. I've never met him in person. But what I think actually makes him infinitely more masculine and more man is he's opened up about his struggles with mental health before. And so I think that's showing a shift in the right direction, that a person who, for all intents and purposes, is this generation's Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, you go back to the 80s and 90s, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the prototypical man. Mm-hmm. I think The Rock is the 2010s version, but he's not just muscles. He's talking about real issues. And I think it just takes more guys talking about their health to realize that it is okay. But I do believe there is still a very large stigma about it. And I think it's just, progress is slow in a lot of things. If we've been conditioned to think this, for the past 200 years or what have you, it's not going to change overnight. But I think small steps in the right direction are what we need.
Right. Especially thinking about talking about, a man's undercarriage. That's not something that we really talk about in circles very much. It's just so, getting rid of some of that stigma, maybe at an earlier age. Like you made that joke, like you don't talk about testicles with fourth graders if you want to keep your job. That's pretty funny. But certainly there should be some kind of conversation, in houses as far as, hey, these are health issues you should think about. And, it was funny when you were talking, I was thinking like what would be a great campaign would be, like having Batman, do a testicular self-exam to show kids. That would be funny.
I mean, I'm all for it. And like, I mean, honestly, I do totally advocate once the kids get into high school. I think it is a conversation that does need to happen in the schools and definitely in the homes. That's a project I worked on with the Department of Education within my state of Virginia. We produced a video for use in high schools about testicular cancer, and it's like it was a project I'm really proud of because I made it in collaboration with the state, but it was filmed and produced by high school students. And it was also written in conjunction with a high school student who was a testicular, or is still a testicular cancer survivor. And then I got input from high school students on what they would want. And obviously I had to marry that all together through the lens of it was approved by the state. So it had to be, clean. But I think it's like a 10-minute video. It's definitely still not a 5-hour webinar.
Right.
But I think those conversations do need to be had. I'm no longer teaching fourth grade. I'm now teaching teachers about technology, and I don't think it's necessarily the most appropriate thing to be talking about with fourth graders.
Right.
But I think absolutely in high school, it's something that does need to be talked about.
So that's cool. So tell me a little about, is there a storyline in the video? And first, is it on YouTube? Because it's on YouTube, we'll put it in the show notes so other people can see it. But is there like a storyline? I mean, how does the video go?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, it has its own website. It's testicularcancer101.org. And there's a embedded YouTube video there. And then there's also a direct download link, from a Google Drive file. But the storyline kind of, it opens with just a couple multiple choice questions about, testicular cancer, and it provides the answer. And then it gives directions for the teacher to pause the video so the class can kind of discuss it. And then I go into sharing a little bit of my personal story. And then I segue into saying, I'm in my 20s, so you in high school might not think you're at risk. And then I allow Grant to share his story. And Grant was a high school junior when he was diagnosed with testicular cancer.
Wow.
So he shares his story. Yeah, and he does an incredible job with his. He lives in Tennessee, so he remotely filmed, and we just spliced it all together. And then from there, I just share a little bit more about risk factors and what to look for. There's kind of a cartoon narration of how to do a self-exam. So, I don't take off my pants at any point in the video if you're worried about that. And then it just kind of ends with a call to action. That was honestly my biggest fear in producing this video. I was like, I'm not sure how I'm going to show this self-exam without showing the self-exam. So I commissioned a graphic artist to make me kind of animation about it.
Like, the health, in health class in high school when they show how to put a condom on with a banana, it's really,
right.
It's really not the same thing. I mean, it's not the same thing at all.
Yeah. So that was, they're tasteful animations, but it's not I'm just the voice. I'm not the model in that section.
But do you know what are some of the statistics nationwide on occurrences of testicular cancer? I mean, do you know those? I mean, I can Google them. I just didn't know if you knew them.
No, I know them off the top of my head. Because I like talking about testicles apparently. So I know these are the things that keep me up at night. So in 2018, which we're pretty much at the end of, in the beginning of the year, the American Cancer Society estimated that there would be about 9,000 new cases of testicular cancer in the United States. It varies throughout other countries. I've never seen a concrete worldwide statistic. Mm-hmm. About one in every 250 guys will develop testicular cancer at some point in their life, with 50% of those cases occurring in guys between 15 and 44. So it's definitely a young man's cancer, but it's actually the most common cancer in young men. It's not the most common cancer in men in general, but for young men, it's the most common cancer. But because it's less than 10,000 cases per year, it's still considered a rare cancer. But it is, those are all kind of scary statistics. It is a very curable cancer. The 5-year survival rate is across all stages is something like 95%. And if it's in stage 1, where it's just contained entirely in the testicle, it's like 99.9% 5-year survival rate. Mm-hmm. So it's a very aggressive cancer, and cancer sounds scary no matter what, but the prognosis is pretty good. The incident rate, it has been increasing over the past couple of decades. probably one of the most frustrating things with testicular cancer is there is no real risk factors, or not risk factors, causes. It's not genetic necessarily. It's not environmental. It's just kind of bad luck. And there's no way to prevent it. You can, like a self-exam isn't going to prevent testicular cancer, but it will help you catch it earlier, which then prevents, increases your likelihood of survival, and also, more importantly, reduces the need for further treatment.
Now, when you were going through your chemo and, like you said, you were young, and I didn't realize it was a young man's cancer. I had no idea. I always think of cancer being an older person disease, and that's really not the case. It's just my mindset. So how did humor work for you? Because I imagine like you go to the doctor, like you're new to this, you said you're new to the city, you go to see the doctor. I mean, so like, how did you employ humor in your own recovery to help you cope?
Yeah. So humor was such a big part of how I coped. It was one thing that I had 21 infusions total over 10 weeks, which is a lot of infusions in a very short amount of time. And one thing that I did was I wore wacky pajama pants to every single infusion. And that was more of a visual type of humor, but I was by far the youngest person in the infusion center up until there happened to be another guy who was diagnosed with testicular cancer about when I was finishing treatment. He was just starting treatment. And so then he ended up becoming the youngest one. And I was like, dude, that was my claim to fame here. Kind of rude. But I'll let him have that one.
You don't rub another man's rhubarb.
I know. I was carving out a nice niche for myself, but just making jokes here and there, as much as I could. And I mean, even my main chemo nurse even noted that. They gave me like a congratulations card at the end of chemo, and she said, like, even when you were throwing up, you were still cracking jokes. And that was very true. There was one time during chemo where I was quite literally throwing up for 5 days straight, which I don't recommend that for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But I was there, and I walked into the infusion center for some anti-nausea medicine, and they put it in my IV and everything, and then probably 2 seconds after I finished that bag, I threw up, and I was like, "Nurse, I think I'll have another, because this one didn't work." And so it was all that kind of stuff is really what helped me get through. As much as I can't underscore enough how much the medical treatment is obviously what helps keep me alive, but I think what kept my spirit alive was making the best of a crappy situation.
Right. Now, since you're out there and you're kind of, I would say, I don't want to say the spokesperson for the community, but certainly you've met probably a lot of other people that have gone through the same thing. Is there a common, sense of humor or joke base that, you guys, people that have gone through this have? Like, you see all the time, like, different people, that have like, you see t-shirts online or whatever. I didn't know if there was, something within your community, things that are just funny to you.
Yeah, I think within the testicular cancer community, those of us who are open about our journey and everything, I think there is such a strong shared sense of humor, because let's be honest, testicles and balls and nuts, or whatever you want to call it, they are funny. I mean, they're funny looking, like they're just two things in this dangly sack of skin.
Mm-hmm.
But then it also lends itself to a lot of puns. And so one of my good friends in the testicular cancer space, his name's Kyle Smith. He'd be a great guest for you as well. He runs a YouTube channel called Check 15, and they do monthly cancer awareness PSAs every month about, he focus on breast, testicular, and skin cancer, but he does it with a healthy sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the funniest jokes I've ever heard him tell, and feel free to cut this because it's a little off color, but I'm going to say it anyways. He says, he's like, a lot of people often ask me, what's it like having one less testicle? And he says, well, I always say, just leaves me a little bit more room for my giant dick. So it's all that kind of stuff.
That's definitely guy humor there. I mean, that's definitely guy humor. That's that's awesome.
Totally is. You should totally connect with him because he's not as funny as me. I'm still the funniest person with one ball, but he's a close second.
That should be your tagline. I'm the funniest guy with one ball. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. We actually got to meet. We met on social media around the same time I was diagnosed, and then we actually met face to face about a year and a half after my diagnosis. And the first thing when we saw each other, he's like, "So I got to ask," and I was like, "I think I know where you're going with this," and he's like, "I think you do too," and he looked at me and he's like, "Did they take your right or your left?" And they took my left and they took his right. So every time we took a picture, we made sure we were standing on the correct side. So if you see pictures of us online, we are always positioned the same exact way because we don't want to cross the streams there.
There you go. That's hilarious. Now, is there a testicular cancer month? Is there a color associated with it? So like with breast cancer, it's October. I think it's October and pink. I mean, what's up?
Yeah. So testicular cancer month is April. So it's coming up here in a couple months, which also coincides with Humor Month.
Yes.
And then the color, I've seen two different things on what the color is. I've seen that purple is the main color because testicles come from like Latin orchid, and orchids are purple, so that's how they came up with purple. But then there's also a lot of people who are like, well, purple's not the most masculine color in the world. Why are we making a male cancer purple? So then some foundations are like, well, we're going to just make it like a blue. Me personally, I just, on all my my organization's stuff, I just use a gradient from blue to purple, so it covers everything. So yeah, so April and then blue or purple, or I guess since you can just change whatever color, you could like make it green for all.
Or you could
matters.
You could have just a fuzzy ribbon. It didn't have to be a color. It could just be a fuzzy ribbon.
Polka dot.
There you
Official
go.
Color. Putting it now.
That's awesome. That's great. Now, going back, have you always had like a pretty good sense of humor? Growing up, do you come from a funny family? I mean, like for me, my dad was hilarious. My brothers are funny. Like in our family, you had to be funny to survive. Otherwise you were going to get the, hell beat out of you. I mean, it was our survival mechanism. What was,
that's how it is. My dad and I both have very similar senses of humor, very dry humor, very sarcastic, a lot of plays on words, very quick. My brother's pretty funny too. Unfortunately, in his case, that's related to his looks more than his sense of humor.
You only said that because now what you're going to do, because if it was like with my brother, I would say that on the air, and then I would tell him, hey, you got to listen to this podcast. I gave you a shout out. And so you'll be listening. That's what you're going to do, isn't it? Because that's such a brother thing to do.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. So for instance, my dad, I've wanted a chainsaw for, I don't know how long. So I've pretty much ever since I bought a home and I put in a fire pit into my backyard, I've wanted a chainsaw. So if a tree comes down, I can cut it down to logs and split it. But even though I'm 27 years old, my parents, who don't live with me and technically have no legal right over me, still say that I'm not responsible enough to have a chainsaw. They may or may not be correct, but I don't know why that's their decision. So for my birthday this past summer, I opened up a box and there was a handsaw wrapped with a chain. And my dad's like, well, I know you wanted a chainsaw, so I got you a chainsaw.
Thanks, Dad. That's hilarious.
I know. Well, and then I was really expecting him to be like, okay, that's the joke. Now here's your actual chainsaw. But no, it's December and I still don't have a chainsaw.
Well, you can go just buy one. I mean, I'm just throwing that out.
I know, but I know it's the principle that matters at this point.
I've got a couple. You come to my house, I'll let you use mine. That's fine. I actually literally spent 2 hours yesterday splitting wood and cutting wood, to throw, because we heat the house part of the winter with wood. And I really feel my age today. I woke up this morning feeling like somebody beat the hell out of me while I was sleeping. But anyway, no, I really enjoyed talking to you. Really gave me a better awareness of testicular cancer and, so many things that I didn't realize were the case. And I want to make sure that I put that link, that video link in the show notes, because I think that'll be a great resource for people, because a lot of people don't know how to do a self-exam. And I think that's, a good thing to know how to do. Now, if after today people want to connect with you, they want to find out more about a Ballsy sense of tumor, where do you want them to go?
So if they want to find out more about me, they can go to ballsysenseoftumor.com, and it's important to make sure that it's a sense of tumor, because I think ballsysenseofhumor.com goes somewhere else, and I cannot be held liable for what you might find at that website. But then
you have to erase your browser history after go to that one.
Yeah. So we are not responsible for whatever might pop up on your screen. You on Instagram, which is probably the social media channel I'm most active on, it's a Ballsy sense of tumor, just all one word. On Facebook, it's also a Ballsy sense of tumor, and on Twitter, it's absot, ABSOT, and then TC after that as well. So absot TC, because the Ballsy sense of tumor was one character too long for Twitter, because I didn't check that before I started making all the different things.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate you sharing your journey and sharing your sense of humor with us.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to getting the ball rolling on more conversations.
Awesome.
There you go. Great interview, wasn't it? Tell you what, I love real, applied, and therapeutic humor. People that are just, out there doing the humor work each and every day. Thank you, Justin, for sharing your journey with us and how you apply humor. Now, I want to encourage you to go to the AATH website, aath.org. Get signed up for the conference. Make that investment yourself. Make 2019 the best year it could possibly be. So until next time, this is Chiplet saying, we'll keep the laugh on for you.
This is Laughbox, the podcast for laughter and humor professionals. Laughbox is made possible by a grant from the National Speakers Foundation and is brought to you by AATH, the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. Find out more at aath.org. Be sure to review Laughbox on iTunes. For show notes and more information about today's conversation, visit laughbox.aath.org.